Welcome to Inheritance to Income, the podcast where we explore the Main Street view of the GWT, the Great Wealth Transfer, and how this massive movement of money and property is shaping our world one property, one family, one community at a time, and how you can transform inheritance to income. I'm your host, Garrick Francis, and I hope you're having a wonder-filled day. The GWT is already underway. Over these next 25 years, financial data experts estimate that up to $77 trillion of real estate will change hands as the silent generation and baby boomers pass on their wealth to Gen X, millennials, and even some of their Gen Z heirs. And today, we're talking about the decision process that our family went through in choosing to transform from inheritance to income. But okay, y'all. Get ready, because today I'm joined by my sometimes reluctant co-host, my sometimes expert design guest, my full-time boo, my CLO, my Chief Love Officer, the CFO of our house, and the designer of our family, the brilliant Sheila Monique Whitaker Francis. Hey, boo.
Hey, baby. Hi, I'm Sheila. And I am happy to be part of this conversation. It's really important. And I love this conversation. Let's get started.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things too about this conversation as we talk about it in the Great Wealth Transfer is that um, statistics show that by 2030, just 5 years from now, women will control 2/3 of the wealth in the U.S., about $34 trillion. So, what is the dynamic you think in a family as we start to talk about how to receive an inheritance or how to let's even go back, the money mindset, about how to develop a good money mindset in a family so that you can be both giver and receiver?
So I think it's important that you be part of the conversation. So your partners and everything, and the whole discussion, and bringing your children into it if you have children, so that you are all on the same page. And it's all about providing generational wealth, right? Generational legacy, so that you can provide this legacy for your children's children. That's in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do.
That is right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, but let's talk a little bit about the family as we talk about it. Talk about the dinner table, and about how what is the money mindset conversation, or what is the conversation like around the dinner table, and should it include money? Should it include legacy? Should it include inheritance or business, or is it just a dinner table?
No, it's definitely more than just a dinner table, right? You gotta, in our family, we talk about everything now. We've been going through an interesting season in our life.
That's true.
Right?
Very true.
And so we've brought our children in so they know everything that's going on. We want to be upfront. And so we move through this season to the season that God has given us together.
That's right.
So I think you have to discuss it all.
Yeah, yeah. And so even when we think about when Mama passed away, when we think about when Mom passed away, the conversations we had to have in an emotionally trying time to get to a point where we could start even thinking about converting inheritance to income.
Well, I think initially we were planning to keep Mama's house the way it was always, right? And that it would be, as I helped Mama design it in 2017, that we would just continue as she would have wanted us to do. There was Garrick and Sheila's room, and there was Reese's room, and there was Karen's room, and we were just going to keep it like that, right? But but then we realized that there were some other factors, right? There's upkeep and lot of things that have to go into. You can't just maintain a house. Well, some people may be able to,
Right.
but we're not able to do that. And so when it was decided that we would sort of separate, Mama's what she left us, the gifts that she has given us with your brother, that we wanted to still have access to this home.
Right.
Right. Am I answering the
No, yeah, you're
question?
exactly
Okay.
right. I mean, we
Okay.
think about it. I think you're right. When people think about inheritance, you don't think about all the inheriting real estate is different because it does come with a lot of responsibilities. I mean, it comes with property taxes, it comes with insurance, it comes with utilities if you're going to keep all the light and heating and air on. It comes with maintenance and upkeep. There are a lot of potential expenses that could go into keeping a inherited property just as property.
Yeah.
As opposed to then, thinking about how do you generate income from that property?
Right.
How do you use it?
And the one thing we knew we didn't want to do is do a long-term rental where somebody else would be living in this house, like permanently, and you never have access to it, right? So much love is going into this house. We wanted to make sure that we also wanted to be able to enjoy it for the rest of our lives.
Right. Well, one of the beautiful things that I remember is how you were, how we would have regular discussions about the entire inheritance process, right? I mean, Mama basically left her estate the way Mama was in charge until her final day.
Absolutely.
And she's still in charge in some way. But Mom wanted to have her two boys, her sons, to divide her estate 50-50, down the middle. She didn't want to be prescriptive. She taught us and then trusted us to be able to honor her wishes and to split things 50-50. She didn't have to say, I want you to have this and you to have this and you to have this. She trusted us to be the men and the brothers that she wanted us to be. But in my case, it's you and me, right? For a lot of families, it is, it's not just the siblings or the kids or the grandkids. It is also their families who are in on part of that discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think that you have to consider that the relationship of the spouse as part of this whole conversation, right? What is that relationship? Are they as one? And are they making decisions together? And I think that would be the hope that everybody is doing that.
So I'm trying to still remember, how did we get to the conversation about renting out the house versus holding on to it and having a place for just us and our family to come to? I mean, it was partly a financial. It was largely a financial.
Largely.
I mean, it was. I mean, I think to kind of set the playing field in the midst of all this, after Mama had passed away, I lost my job, right? And so that added another kind of layer onto all the complexities of everything. But the blessing is we did have an inheritance that we could build upon.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think we should go back a little bit more about how there was some strife in terms of figuring out in the inherited properties who's getting what. Yeah, Mom set it up so you guys would be 50-50, but that took a little toll on trying to figure it all out so that it was equitable and fair. And then once that was decided, because we figured out, I know we had originally planned to keep everything together, right? The families were going to work in unison, and we were just going to I guess rent out the properties or sell certain properties and things like that. But you found out.
I think you're right. I mean, it's important that when you're going through a process like this, as a family um, who has been left an inheritance, and you're deciding how that is going to be split and separated, it can cause some strife. It can
Yeah.
cause some back and forth. It can cause some animosity. There's an emotional toll there that comes into play. And in our case, when you live not all in the same location, some are kind of out of towners, or some live differently, and so you have to come together and go through that struggle, which we did. It wasn't always easy.
Hmm.
And I think, we at one point, we'll talk about some structure issues, but yeah, you can have a trust, you can have an LLC, you can be members of that LLC. That's how, Mama and her brother and sister were. They had certain properties in an LLC that they were the members of.
Mm-hmm.
We decided, we don't necessarily want to continue those, or to create a new structure like that, because at the end of the day, my brother and I especially decided that, we could be business partners or we could be brothers, but we probably couldn't be both.
Right.
So that wasn't going to work out too well, because we
Right.
just have different styles. We have different goals. We have different aspirations, different timelines. And so, we decided to honor Mom's wishes by, separating things
Right.
50-50,
Right.
and just, preserving the brotherhood over the business.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when we finally decided that that was the way that was going to be our journey, that's when we really started thinking about, well, how do we see this house? We always wanted to be part of our lives. There was never ever an idea that we would sell it.
Right.
It was always going to be Mama's
It's
house
gonna be
in here,
Mama's house.
right? I mean, and so how could we honor her wishes with that in mind?
Right.
And so that's when we realized, again, we wanted to be part of it. We wanted to enjoy the home. So the best avenue was not going to be long term, because that becomes somebody else's house. It was going to be some sort of short term situation, short term rentals, where we could still enjoy the house and we could allow guests to enjoy the house.
Right.
So I think that was our thought process.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. When we talk about inheritance to income, there are many pathways. Right. So you bring up one: when you inherit real estate, you can sell it. That's one way to generate wealth and income and deploy it into something else.
Yep.
You could receive it and then at some point, do what's called a 1031 exchange, where you exchange it for a different type of property using the equity that you have in it. Or you can decide that you want to rent it, which is the decision, I think, the way we went. But then you have, as you mentioned, you have a few choices. You can do long-term rental, which is you rent it to somebody on an annual basis and they pay you every month and you get the income, and it's basically their house, but they're renting it.
Right.
There's midterm, which is, 30 days, 60 day, some number of days where you have people who will rent out a property. Or then there's this, talk a little bit more about the short-term type of a rental.
Right. Well, so when you decide to do short-term rental, you're really entering the hospitality field, right? Because you're competing with hotels and other people, sort of like in the Airbnb or the Vrbo, those sort of platforms. And so what you're trying to do is, when people are searching for a property, you want them to choose your property. And so what was really unique about our home, Mama's home, is that when this is, I think, the exact type of place families are looking for when they are coming to a different city, or for whatever reason. It has a wonderful kitchen, it has bedrooms, it has family spaces, it's things that you want for your family that a hotel really has trouble offering, right? So what we found is that with our kids, our two children, our wonderful kids, when we would go someplace, it was never enough space, right? You could get the regular hotel room that has 2 beds in it. You're all on top of each other. You might have a kitchenette if you're lucky, that's cool. But as they started getting older, we needed at least 2 bedrooms. And when you're looking for 2-bedroom hotel spaces, generally there isn't a full kitchen until we found some that did have that, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
And you don't always want to eat out.
Mm-hmm.
We like cooking, so you want to be able to do that. So I think that is where the whole short-term rental comes into play, because families need that sort of space, need those sort of amenities. And so that's what we decided to do. We wanted to offer our home to people who are like us, needing those sort of features
Right.
when they come to stay.
And it's interesting, man. I've been around real estate for my whole life with my granddad and mom and aunts and uncles, and I've heard of, short-term rental, I guess, has always been a thing, but it was, you went to the beach, you went to the mountains, you could rent a house for a week and it was rented by a local realtor or something like that. But now with all these new platforms with Airbnb and VRBO and Booking.com, those things offer a different pathway for generating income from a home for as much or as little part of the year as you want. You can put it up and you can do it seasonally, or you can do it all year long and have it available for folks on different platforms or book it yourself. I mean, it's just another leg in that real estate opportunity for people.
And you still have access to your house.
Right. You still
the key.
Still have family events or birthday parties or holidays or things you want to do.
Right.
That's true. That's true. So when you think about it and you've made, so we went down that pathway of, well, we love mama's house.
Yeah.
We want to stay connected. We want to keep it. So that's one decision. Then the second decision was, if we're going to keep it, are we going to use it ourselves solely, or are we going to then try and, create income from this inheritance? So we decided to go the inheritance to income route.
Right.
So then once you made that decision, you say, well, how do we generate income from this inheritance? And you settle on, rental. So then you make the decision of, long-term, mid-term, short-term rental. And you get to that decision tree, you said, we're going to do a short-term rental. So once you've done that as a designer, by the way, let me take a little quick pause here. The brilliant Sheila Monique Whitaker Francis has her master's degree in architecture from North Carolina State University, and as I mentioned, is the designer and did a lot of different things in kind of design. So when you think about short-term rental from a design perspective, from a mama's home to short-term rental, how does that process start? We'll talk more later in depth about it, but how do you start thinking about the design process? And what would people need to do if they want to take what had been a single-family home and turn it into a short-term rental?
I think if we first start talking about what kind of accommodations would we want if we were families coming into a certain situation. So, when Mama was here and I helped her design her dream home, she lived pretty much on one level, right? And so it was a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath house. Beautiful gourmet kitchen. Mom was a bridge player. She was she was a Delta in all these wonderful organizations. So she had entertainment areas and things like that. So there were some really good bones already, right? And so the thing that I like is the idea that each bedroom has a bathroom. So I would want everybody to have that if it's possible, right? So that's kind of the things we started thinking about: family gathering spaces, places to eat, where people can just flow from space to space. A gourmet kitchen, Mama already had it, so how could we sort of accentuate that and build upon that? What are some of the other amenities that families or office folks or anybody coming through might want? Well, it would be really cool to have a home theater, right? It'd be really cool, Mr. Golfer, to have a golf simulator, which, while we were still here going through everything, you kind of created a golf simulator yourself, sort of a hitting space
Mhm.
that you created
Up in the attic.
in the
Yeah.
attic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Unfinished attic, but yes, but you were there. And so, those sort of spaces, game spaces. What are the kind of um, rooms that
Mhm.
would enhance somebody's experience?
Right, right. And it's kind of, we looked at, I think the way we looked at it was um, in a way, it's like a house is not a home, it's a business. So you either have to have a business plan for it. So in our case, to really think about the short term, we even had to go back and do some market research, right? We had to kind of validate, you have to validate what type of investment a market will bear. So
Yeah.
when we looked at the long term, we looked at the midterm, we looked at the short term, but I think we understood, yeah, you could do a long-term rental and you could rent it out. And then, but when you look at midterm and short term, you kind of have to look at what the market will bear. Is your property in the right location to attract people for vacation or for business or for concerts, or is there a medical facility nearby?
Mm-hmm.
Are there the right types of things that people want to access for a short-term stay? Or in a midterm type of a thing, again, universities, medical centers, places where people have to come to work or stay for 30 or 60 days or 90 days when they have contracts. And there are different things out there, but that's the kind of thought pattern you have to have when you're deciding uh, what you're going to offer. And then
Mm-hmm.
even with the amenities, you have to think about, okay, what kind of neighborhood are you in? What kind of region are you in? And will um, that particular um, amenity drive revenue?
Mm.
Because if it doesn't drive revenue, then the value may not be as important. But I think it's part of the pull and tug
Yeah.
between the design process and the business plan
This is
process
true.
that you
This
have
is
to
true.
kind of put together. So,
This
right,
is true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and let's think about too, what are some of the bumps in the road that people are going to potentially run into as they start this process. And especially, this will be good because some of these we'll explore more in some future episodes. But what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the bumps that you think, again, when you're creating this business plan, this inheritance to income business plan, what are some of the things you think people should start thinking about factoring in?
Do you mean from the design standpoint, or
Design
just?
standpoint, or just from managing the whole process standpoint, because you were largely the manager of this process of dealing with issues that would pop up. What are the things that you wish you had thought about before?
Well, where I'm leading is the construction process.
Hmm.
Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
that
about?
works. That's one of the key areas.
So, um, I wish we had we had three contractors bid on the project, but I wish we had done a little more thorough research on each contractor.
Hmm.
Um, because that was bumpy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a bumpy situation. So, um, once you have the design and you believe you're communicating through plans and drawings with the contractor, you give them everything that you think that they should have, and then your contractor says, "Oh, I didn't really read that." What? Huh? You know, I didn't really look at that. Oh, you said this? I really, you think I looked at that? What?
Right.
So it's kind of like making sure that the person you decide to go with, the contractor you decide to go with, really is equipped to handle the project and
Hmm.
is really serious about the project.
Right. And I
Um,
think the other interesting part of it too is that if you need to go the financing route, right? You're trying to figure out how much you think you need, and so you need good estimates of what you think you'll need to be able to do it. I think one of the things we learned early on is that we had an idea in our heads of what we thought it would take, um, versus what contractors and other people thought it would take. And I think going back, we would try and marry those two a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Maybe even have a better sense of what contractors were thinking prior to getting all the financing in place would be helpful for some people to have a little bit more of an understanding of, okay, how much do I actually need? What's going to be the investment? Because a lot of times it's going to take an investment.
Right.
Because if a parent has lived in the house for 5, 10, 15, 50 years, to bring it up to code, to bring it up to conditions that are allow you to rent it out to someone or to short-term rental it, you're going to have to do certain things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, that's a whole nother thing, right? Having to clear the house
Yeah. Yeah.
and go through all the stuff and the emotional toll that took on you and
Right.
Charles to go through that, to prepare it for somebody else, whether long-term or short-term.
And hey, let me just take a minute to say, if you like the content you're hearing, if you relate to it, if you've been going through something very similar, or if you think you will be going through something similar, please make sure and hit the like and subscribe button, because we're going to have a lot more conversations about all the specific things that go into creating income from your inheritance. So again, hit that like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. So when we think about inheritance to income, when we even start thinking about our planning for legacy development, our plan ahead for our children, our children's children, what do you think we should be doing, or what do you think anyone should be doing to have that set up and put in place?
Well, I believe an estate planner is really important, and we have a wonderful estate planner and church member, and I think that you have a conversation about what your ideas are, and we want to leave a legacy for our children's children, right? So that's really important to us. So I think you have to do that. You have to have that conversation, really iron out things, as you look towards the future, as you look towards how you plan to manage your estate so that your children can manage the estate that you leave them.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that it's really important to involve your potential heirs from an early point as possible. I mean, I had the great benefit of growing up at the feet of my grandfather, Charles Irving Sr., and in old houses and rental houses. I mean, he brought his first piece of property 100 years ago.
My goodness.
In somewhere around 1925, about the year my mom was born. But he took us places. We heard him and saw him talk to contractors. We went with him to the store when he was arranging for things. We understood what he was financing and what he wasn't financing. He told us what an interest rate was on a loan he had taken out to do a little bit of work on a piece of property, and on the back of the envelope, he figured out what his cash flow was going to be. So he knew that the rent was going to pay off the note. He exposed us to things. So I think one of the things I think is really important is for people in this whole decision process, as a receiver, your desire is to become a giver, right? You want to, when you inherit, you want to then set up for the next generations, but you need the involvement, engagement. Sometimes those conversations can be uncomfortable for people.
Right. Right. And so you're blessed to have had that situation. And I didn't. I didn't have that situation. I grew up in inner city Philadelphia with no money. And so that's a whole nother side of the coin, right? Having conversations. You can't have conversations if you don't have anything to have a conversation about. It's not an easy,
Not an easy conversation.
not an easy conversation, but you don't know what you don't have.
Right.
So that's a whole nother. I'm sure there are folks in where I grew up that same sort of boat.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that you are correct. We need to have conversations with our children now. That's important, so that they are aware of what we have and how we build things together. And I'm so glad you were able to be exposed to that, because you already had an inkling of what to do and how things get done to be successful.
Right.
Which
But
is
I
good.
think too, it maybe nowadays it's important for, especially for, I guess, millennial and Gen Xers, to have conversations with their baby boomer parents, and because what I have found is that people in the baby boomer generation really fought hard to live the American dream. They worked hard. They worked somewhere for a long time. They scraped together enough to come up with a down payment. They bought a nice house in a nice area of town that 40 years ago when they bought the house was on the outskirts of town, or was in a neighborhood that was maybe in real estate parlance, you've got these quality A, B, C neighborhoods, but it was kind of an average neighborhood, sort of nice, sort of not, but they made sure they owned something. And now they've had that piece of property for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And, some families in this whole great wealth transfer may not even know what they have.
Right.
Right? They may not even know the full value of that property, how much it is appreciated, how much equity they now have in that piece of property. And so, don't you think we're kind of in this space now where hopefully somebody, whether it's because of this podcast or some other educational material they receive, will know how to ask the questions of their parents and grandparents about the property they own or the things that they've achieved.
Yeah, I think yes, but I also think that same generation has been sort of like hush hush about what they own and their finances, and that's, like you said, it's a very uncomfortable um, conversation to bring up. There are some people who are like, "Why are we talking about this? You're going to get it when I'm gone." That whole conversation. So you have
Yeah,
to
don't
really
rush me.
don't rush me. I'm not going yet. you know, and so that is a whole nother dynamic. And there are some families who may have a little tension in there. Like well, let's ask mom about this, and there may be different relationships. Maybe they don't want to know, or maybe mom doesn't want to share with this one child what she's planning to leave to the other child. So it's a whole lot of dynamics involved,
Yeah.
but it needs to be done.
It does. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
things we've had the benefit of going through with our church, right? Kingdom Fellowship AME is the Faith and Finance course, and then even now, as a facilitator of that course, we talk about having some uncomfortable conversations, right? Because you have to start to talk about these things while people are alive,
Right.
so that you understand what happens after they've passed away, so you don't lose your grip on it. You want to try and maintain it. So, but it is, especially in our community, in the Black community especially, it has been really uncomfortable sometimes to talk about money. It just wasn't a kitchen table conversation it was a grown folk conversation. It's what the grown folks talk about. but we've got to kind of expand that financial literacy now down through the generations. That's part of the legacy, don't you think?
I do, and I think that's why this conversation is very important, because like you mentioned, the great wealth transfer is going to be, a lot of people are going to be in this boat, and they need to have some idea of how to navigate it, right? And so it's important. It's a very important conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's great that we've started this conversation. I look forward to some more conversations about the process that we went through, mistakes we made. We made a few.
Yeah, just a little.
And so people
right?
can continue to learn about the process,
Yeah.
right? And all the different things that we had to go through and overcome and enjoy about the whole process of converting inheritance to income for what mama would have so that mama would be proud
Yeah.
of what we've done, and so that we could build a legacy for our children and our children's children. I mean, that's kind of what we've designed this whole program around, is to really help people, hopefully help people understand that it's doable. It's not easy. It's rewarding. It's engaging, but hopefully you learn from what other people have done, so that you too can create a pathway, a potential to create income from an inheritance that may be coming their way as part of the entire great wealth transfer. So I look forward to having you back again.
Okay.
To talk about some other things that we did, to talk about design, to talk about choices, to talk about other things that happened along the way, working with contractors, as you mentioned, and how that process can, put gray hairs on your head.
Yeah, a little more.
and dent your finances. So we'll talk. I look forward to having. So you're coming back.
I'll be back.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, I just we're grateful for the time that you have given to us and spent with us to talk about the journey from inheritance to income, its rewards, its stumbling blocks, and a number of things along the way. And we hope again that you found something here to sink your teeth into, that'll make you want to hit the like or subscribe button, and that will make you want to join us again next week. So again, it's with great esteem for the time you've granted us, and I hope you have a transformational week. And peace, gratitude, and blessings.